The standoff with the Big Four banks continues, with the Big Four simply saying that their interest rates remain under review after the Reserve Bank of Australia's decision on Tuesday to again cut the official cash rate. For his thoughts on this issue and the other matters of the day, I spoke to the Assistant Treasurer, Bill Shorten, a little earlier this morning.
Well, the silence is deafening. The Reserve Bank's recognised in the Australian economy that they want to reduce the official cash rate of money. They do this because they want to create confidence and stimulate expenditure. And what we're seeing is the banks are hanging on to that margin, and it is to be silent and to do nothing is counterproductive to the interests of the Australian economy.
Do you think it's a form of price signalling? And if it is, the government's tough new legislation on anti-competitive behaviour, will it have some teeth on this front?
Well, let's cross that bridge when we get to it. I think initially I wouldn't let the banks off the pressure off the hook of actually not passing on the decrease in interest rates. For people on $300,000 mortgage, this is worth $50. If you're on a $700,000 mortgage, it's worth $121 a week. This is real money. What the Australian economy needs as a buffer to Europe is confidence. We've seen our national accounts. There is growth. There is increasing, there's some positive signs in the Australian economy. We're doing better than Europe. What we need is confidence. And the banking sector can't just make large profits at the expense of everyone else. It needs to understand that it does well because the government stands behind it and the taxpayer. It does well when its customers, the mortgage holders and small business are doing well. Pass on the rate cuts.
Yeah, I know it's a national sport, bank bashing, but the fact is, during the financial crisis, taxpayers did help shore up the banks, didn't they? And now they're making enormous profits. Is that message being conveyed to the banks by the government?
I remember when I was younger, there was a saying when you at the school dance, always leave with the one who brought you. And in the case of the banks, the Australian banks should remember that whilst they've got some smart people working for them, it's the Australian taxpayer, the Australian government, the Australian customers who help contribute to their profits, and loyalty is a two-way street.
The CFMEU's warning they might encourage their members to boycott the banks. This could end up being counterproductive, couldn't it, if they don't pass on any of the rate cut?
Well, you'd have to wonder about the brand damage now that's being done to the Big Four banks. I know that there's 10 institutions, smaller ones have already passed it on. I can't understand. It seems to me that no one wants to go first and no one wants to go last. But that's not exactly leadership. So, you said before bank bashing's a national sport. It's a sport I'd happily cancel. I'm happy if we never have another fixture. I would just think that we've had one reduction. 3 of the Big Four passed it on fully. NAB passed it on 20 points, not 25 points. But there's not enough confidence in the Australian economy when we see what's going on in the rest of the world that I think the banks can afford to pocket the margins that they're trying to do. Now, I live in the real world. I know that Australian banks borrow heavily from overseas. And it's hard to... There's a liquidity problem around the world. There's not a lot of money to borrow. But by the same token, I also know that Australian banks were backed in the GFC by the government and therefore the taxpayer. And I also know that you need to build confidence in the economy. I also know they're making big profits. Not against people making profits. Just share some of the banking love with your customers.
On a couple of issues, just quickly, the Labor review, there are mixed opinions as to whether this should be released or not. The Prime Minister and the Treasurer say no. Other ministers, including Kevin Rudd, Peter Garrett and Martin Ferguson, all say it should be released. The Labor review post-2010 election, should it be?
I support the PM and the Treasurer, but I also think this yarn's I think it's become a bit of a beat-up now. The Labor Party had a very successful convention. I think people are looking to try and pick holes in it. The Labor Party dealt with some very contentious issues. The Labor Party dealt with the issue of the selling of uranium to India, for instance. There was a lot of good policy which went on. You know, you were there very intensively over the 3 days. There's a lot else going on in the economy. I just don't think this is in the top 10 issues that are keeping me up at night.
On the tensions between Prime Minister Gillard and Kevin Rudd, Senator Conroy this morning said he's not surprised people are a little tense at this time of year after a long, difficult year and everyone's looking forward to Christmas. Would you agree with that assessment?
I agree that it's been a tough year. And remembering last summer we had the terrible flood, so for a lot of people they never even had their holidays. So I think the nation collectively could do with a bit of a break.
And the leadership?
Again, people are doing their day jobs properly. I think people are just looking to create stories. I'm not... again, what's important is what's happening in Europe, the banks, the national accounts. There is a lot of serious stuff going on, and I think that in politics we do ourselves a favour to move from dealing with... from the gossip issues to the issues of substance. That's where I'm focused.
I know you've got to get going. I want to ask your thoughts on one last thing. The Brotherhood of St Lawrence has issued a report on the state of dental health in this country. Millions of Australians missing out. Apparently the Dental Advisory Council has also validated the idea of a national dental scheme. I know you're passionate about the disabilities insurance scheme, but this is another area which does need to be addressed at some point, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's no question that there's 3 or 4 areas which are pretty important, including the improvements for the deal which people with disabilities get, doing more in the dental space. For what it's worth, we should put on notice, and I think it is worth something, this government's training up more dental interns, so there's more dentists. We've got a subsidised teenage dental checkup system which we've introduced, which is going well. The people who you don't hear a lot about, the opposition, they've got some scheme which would see that millionaires can get $4,000 subsidies, but people on pensions can't get checkups. So Labor's working on the issue of dental care along with disability insurance, aged care and a whole range of other things. It is the meat and potatoes of what makes Australia a good society, so of course it is important, as you say.
Assistant Treasurer Bill Shorten, appreciate your time.
Thanks, Kieran.